Come, let us explore Lojong mistakes most people don't know they're making. Way back in the 1980s, when the crust of the earth was still cooling, there was a musical group called X long before Elon Musk was ever an element of our zeitgeist. And a chorus of their songs sang, "We must not think bad thoughts." And of course that was very, very campy, and it was very tongue-in-cheek, and it felt like it was a nod to the Red Scare of the 50s. But this is common amongst many people who fancy themselves spiritual. They say to themselves, some things to notice in my environment are bad and some are good. There are good sights and bad sights, good sounds and bad sounds, good sensations and bad sensations, good flavors and bad flavors, good scents and bad scents. But they're not done there. They also say, hey, there are good emotions and bad emotions, and good intentions and bad intentions, and good thoughts and bad thoughts, and good memories and bad memories, and good imaginings and bad imaginings. And I must repress the bad ones, and I must contrive the good ones. What is the price we pay for that? Number one, it feeds our rigidity. Remember, we can be rigid or we can be flexible. We can be like the Big Lebowski or we can be like the dude. It feeds our controlling tendencies. Once again, we can be controlling or we can be laid back. We cannot be both, for they are mutually exclusive. In Tibet, there is a popular set of teachings and beliefs and practices known as Lojong. It's a part of a trio known as Lama, Rim, Lojong, and Low Rig. But just because it's part of a trio doesn't give it legitimacy. Just because it's practiced by every sect of Tibetan Buddhism doesn't mean it's beneficial, for it contradicts the teachings of the founders of Mahamudra and the teachings of the founders of Vata Yoga, also known as Dzogchen. That in itself is just people talking against people. What it really contradicts is non-duality. So good old Prahevajra taught that rather than thinking in terms of suffering and bliss, just think in terms of energy. And if you're experiencing, whether something's pleasurable or painful, it's just energy. That's not ignoring what it says. What it is, it's zooming out from a detailed view to an overview. So the idea here in terms of Mahayana Buddhism, in terms of even Theravada Buddhism, is to be less focused on feelings and more focused on, what's it called? Appraisal. Less focused on something, whether something is pleasurable or painful, and more focused on simply just how intense it is. And our job is not to control. But to simply notice what we're experiencing as we breathe in and relax into what we're experiencing as we breathe out. But how is there a peril in that? If we do that, if we're feeling a negative emotion, if we're feeling fear, if we're feeling rage, if we're feeling desire, will we become a slave to those impulses? And that's a really legitimate question. The answer is this. And I have to work blue here, so here's a warning alert. In terms of sexual tantra, many men, there's some men have difficulty with erectile dysfunction. Others on the opposite end of the spectrum have a problem with premature ejaculation. And a common technique that helps men with premature ejaculation is when they feel they are approaching the point of no return, to physically relax. Not at the point of no return, but as they feel they are approaching it. And they notice it prevents ejaculation. Same thing with a sneeze. If you feel before a sneeze, we involuntarily start taking very short breaths, flooding our diaphragm and our intercostal muscles with oxygen-rich blood. And then we have an explosive sneeze, which ejects particles at great velocity from our nose and mouth. But if we relax, that undermines the short staccato breath phase, and therefore undermines the sneeze. And why am I saying this? Are sneezes public enemy number one? Of course not. That's just silly talk. But it's an example that relaxation is an antidote to an explosive indulgence of an impulse, whether it's an impulse to flee or an impulse to fight or an impulse to fuck, whatever it is. By the most efficient way to deal with it is to notice it with great vulnerability as we breathe in, forsaking all happy stories we might tell ourselves about ourselves, and relax as we breathe out. This is the engine that drives the 7 enlightenment factors taught in the Theravadan school. This is the engine that drives the Chan and the Proto-Zen of the Mahayana school. This is the engine that drives Buddhist Tantra in the Mantrayana schools. And it's what we're going to focus on during this morning's practice. Thus, we conclude our opening lesson, and now we prepare for this morning's group practice. It is Rey Skywalker Sunday morning. Come, let us meditate like a Jedi after 30 seconds of housekeeping. This is Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. For more than 30 years, I've spent about 8 hours a day, almost every day, studying, practicing, mastering, and reverse engineering the teachings and techniques of each school of meditation so that you would not have to. Welcome, my friends, to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you. Please chant with me. Whatever comes, may all beings let it come. Whatever stays, may all beings let it stay. Whatever goes, may all beings let it go. So my hands are folded this way, not because I'm petitioning a real or imaginary celestial entity, simply because it's a useful way to gently invite my real or imagined subtle energies to coalesce within my central channel. Welcome to the first quarter of this early morning's mindful crease counting meditation. Let us begin by reviewing Bengali crease counting. Over the span of 12 inhalations, we can advance our right thumb in the following manner, beginning with our little finger. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Multiply this by 8 sets, and you've got 96 inhalations. We could keep track of those 8 sets on our left hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sets of 12 inhalations each. But the question remains, how do we keep track of this first of 4 quarters? Simple. We're going to rest the great knuckle at the base of our right little finger, upon the tip of our left little finger, palms up in our lap. Doing so could gently invite the real or imagined subtle energies to coalesce in the bladder region of our lower abdomen. Let us explore the neuroscience of mindfulness. Every time we inhale, whether we know it or not, we automatically access our sympathetic nervous system, ensconced within the middle third of our spinal cord. This bad boy has evolved to help us to notice in a very special way, to help us notice vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly. But notice what? Notice mind's antics of perception. You know, seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, smelling, and the like, including emotion, intention, cognition, recollection, and imagination. Every time we silently and mentally recite the demonstrative pronoun this during our inhalation, we interrupt our brain's habit of competing with our sympathetic nervous system and instead lay the groundwork for cooperation between the two. And now let us turn to a concise explanation of meditation. When we silently and mentally recite the one-syllable verb ease during our exhalation, we physically relax and mentally release what we noticed during our inhalation to the extent that what we noticed could fleetingly feel less tantalizing, less permanent, and less defining. This, of course, is the deep familiarization with the literal impermanence that supports letting go. This is the first fold of the Buddha's Eightfold Path, and it is plopped into our lap simply by playing with mindfulness and meditation every 12 hours or so. So together as a team, let us practice right now. Let us chant a selection from Tilopa's Song of Mahamudra, composed by Tilopa, translated by Chang, and adapted as well as amplified by yours truly. Please chant with me. The clouds that wander... Oopsie, is that fit on the page okay? Okay. The clouds that wander through the sky have no roots, no home, nor do the distinctively dualistic thoughts floating through the mind. Once the self-mind is vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly and fleetingly noticed during or inhalation, the tyranny of discrimination's duality stops as we relax into our exhalation. Welcome to the second quarter of this early morning's mindful crease counting meditation. How are we going to keep track of the second quarter? By resting the great knuckle at the base of our right index finger, upon the tip of our left index finger, palms up in our lap. Doing so can gently invite our real or imagined subtle energies to coalesce at the crown of our head. Quick review of mindfulness. As we silently and mentally recite the demonstrative pronoun this during our inhalation, we cannot help but notice the antics of mind. Now let's explore the neuroscience of meditation. Every time we exhale, whether we know it or not, we access our parasympathetic nervous system, divided by the lower third and the upper third of our spinal cord. This parasympathetic nervous system has evolved to physically relax and mentally release to such a degree that what we noticed during our previous inhalation could fleetingly feel as non-graspable as a vast empty void. Now, any good English teacher will remind us that a simile is only as useful as it is relatable. Therefore, we have to ask the question, what? What is a real-world example of a non-graspable, vast, empty void? How about the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which, although could be tantalizing to the eye, is intangible to the hand? A fringe benefit of playing with mindfulness and meditation perhaps every 12 hours or so is the first fold of the Buddha's Eightfold Path's deep familiarization with the figurative emptiness that supports our mental release. Therefore, together as a team, let us train in mindfulness and meditation right now. Please chant with me. In space, shapes and colors appear to form, yet neither by black nor white is space tinged. From the self-mind, the perception, emotion, intention, cognition, recollection, and imagination pertaining to all things emerge. Yet the mind by virtues and vices is not stained. Through the magic of Mahamudra's awareness and release. I think this will chant better. Through the magic like awareness and release of Mahamudra. Welcome to the third quarter of this early morning's mindful crease counting meditation. How are we going to keep track of the third quarter? By resting the great knuckle at the base of our right ring finger, upon the tip of our left ring finger, palms up in our lap. Doing so could gently invite our real or imagined subtle energies to coalesce in the navel region of our mid-abdomen. Sturgeon's law reminds us that 90% of everything sucks. Since the Neolithic Revolution, the majority of societies have conditioned the majority of its denizens to be rigid instead of flexible, fearful instead of loving, superstitious instead of rational, controlling instead of laid back. Religious patriarchy has conditioned us to be elitist instead of egalitarian, cryptic instead of lucid, competitive instead of cooperative, and quite often cruel instead of kind. The most blatant way we see this rigidity and these controlling tendencies is when people, members of religious patriarchy, strive to meditate. These people rely chiefly upon focus and analysis. The only neural pathways that can provide those functions are the ones found in discrete regions, such as the medial prefrontal cortex or the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. But we overuse our prefrontal cortex at our peril. And an exhausted prefrontal cortex triggers our amygdala, which is the seat of anxiety and aggression. I've got some good news. When we silently and mentally recite the demonstrative pronoun this during our inhalation, and thus notice the antics of mind, which of course is mindfulness. And when we silently and mentally recite the one-syllable verb ease during our exhalation, and thus relax and release what it is we noticed during our previous inhalation, that is meditation. And when we practice mindfulness and meditation every 12 hours or so, first it calms the impulses of anxiety and aggression. Second, it calms the tyranny of anxiety and aggression. It calms anxiety and aggression's efforts to control our choices and our utterances and our deeds. Third, it stimulates the practice of mindfulness and meditation. Stimulates our anterior cingulate gyrus, this thing here that kind of looks like the letter C. This thing that functions as the hub of our mirror neurons, the seat of empathy, and as such the root of both compassion and love. This is exactly why the late Tulku Thondup insisted that the most that focus and analysis could do was to contrive a analog of love, flaccid and worthless and weak. But the greatest irony is that the highest love is the spontaneous and effortless fringe benefit of simply playing with mindfulness and meditation. How important is this mindfulness? How important is this empathy? It comprises 50% of the Buddha's Eightfold Path. Kind intention, kind communication, kind conduct, and commerce that is as cooperative as it is kind. And all this comes simply from, and the second through fifth folds of the Buddha's Eightfold Path is driven by the seventh fold of mindfulness and the eighth fold of meditation. Together as a team, let us play with mindfulness and meditation right now. Good morning. Welcome to our early morning group meditation practice. I think could be great fun if together as a team we chanted a selection from Tilopa's Song of Mahamudra. The darkness of ages cannot shroud the glowing sun. The long aeons of samsara's tyranny of our competitive instincts can never hide the most brilliant light like awareness. The words are spoken to explain how, as we relax into our exhalation, all that we noticed during our previous inhalation could feel as non-graspable as a vast empty void. However, a purely intellectual abstraction of the void as such can never be viscerally and transformatively understood. Welcome to the fourth and final quarter of this early morning's mindful crease counting meditation. How are we going to keep track of this fourth quarter? By resting the great knuckle at the base of our right middle finger, upon the tip of our left middle finger, palms up in our lap. Doing so could gently invite our real or imagined subtle energies to coalesce in the heart region of our chest. Doing so takes place automatically and effortlessly. It's not something that has to be visualized or forced or willed. Just, rest the great knuckle of the right middle finger upon the tip of the left middle finger, and everything else takes care of itself. Let's explore duality. As we silently and mentally recite the demonstrative pronoun this during our inhalation, we can notice all manner of things. Yes, we can notice sights, sounds, sensations, flavors, scents, and the like. Of course we could notice emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, and imaginings. But we also notice dualities. We notice the external and the internal, the physical and the mental, the pleasurable and the painful, the interesting and the boring, the glorious and the grotesque. The most fundamental of all dualities is that some of the things we observe, we desire. Some of the things we notice are pretty dreadful. And if we're really honest with ourselves, we can notice a subtle resistance to the real or potential absence of what we desire, as well as a resistance to the real or imagined presence of what we don't like. We cannot transcend the fact that there are pleasurable things and painful things. But we can, just like a boxer might slip a punch, he can't stop his opponent from punching, but he can make sure his head is out of the way of the approaching fist. Similarly, when we silently and mentally recite the one-syllable verb ease during our exhalation, we physically relax and mentally release in a way that transcends that duality, that transcends the tyranny of that duality, that transcends the tyranny of that resistance. Now, at first blush, that might sound like we're being asked by the ancients to be nothing but doormats, forever having muddy boots scraped across our face, which most dermatologists do not recommend. But this is wild. The more we practice mindfulness and meditation, the more we will notice that our choices and our utterances and our deeds begin flowing from the effortless effort of love's centered spontaneity, which should not be confused with the scattered spontaneity that we might experience after our fourth consecutive espresso, but the centered spontaneity that flows effortlessly and automatically from our practice of mindfulness and meditation, the source of the mastery of the sixth fold of the Buddha's Eightfold Path. So together as a team, let us practice right now. And remember, the moment you have a specific question about Buddhist chanting, Buddhist philosophy, or Buddhist meditation, please do not hesitate to type your question in great detail in the chat window. You have taken your first step into a much larger world. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. In approximately 11 hours or so, I would very much like to return to today's evening meditation class and group practice. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.